Hello and welcome everybody. Today the webinar will run for about 15 minutes. If you have questions you can post them at any time and we'll review them as the last part of the webinar. Today we'll be talking about how you can drive efficiencies from your higher education innovation strategy. So the agenda for today, I'd like to cover 4 topics and then at the end share a case study with you. So those topics are: what are some of the higher ed challenges? Where do we think you can start? And what are the benefits of doing that? And then some tips on how to speed up digital delivery. So at the end then we'll play a case study for you. So what are the challenges facing the higher education sector? For one, a lot of the student admin systems were built in the 80s and 90s. Interestingly, that's older than many of the students who are attending university or higher education. A lot of them have user interfaces for admin staff or no digital user interface. Secondly, a lot of the end user interactions are drowning in paper. Students need to complete lots of paper forms, so do academics, international students, students with English as a second language, so some challenges there. Hundreds of people within universities are executing administrative tasks, and in many cases that's instead of a focus on the business or value add work. From a technology point of view, our experience is that there has been a failure to a lesser or greater degree in some universities to migrate infrastructure to the cloud. And on top of that, the culture has not moved to a more innovative culture. Lastly, learning models have remained a little bit stagnant over years, so there's been a lack of universities embracing new learning models to a degree. Of course, another challenge facing the sector, in our opinion, seems to be the inherent waste in many of the existing solutions that are built or purchased, and also the method by which they are delivered. So eliminating waste from the development process for key projects is key to the success of any digital or innovation strategy. So if you look at the Standish Group's report, it states that 2/3 of functions delivered by traditional projects are rarely or never used. In our opinion, that's a significant amount of waste, 2/3. So where do you start? Well, where does the opportunity lie within universities, and where should you focus? In our experience, admissions, enrollment, research and finance and HR account for a very, very significant number of manual processes. Processes which are supported by lots of paper forms and lots of unnecessary person-to-person interaction. And from a business model point of view, there seems to be a significant global trend perhaps now to focus on how learning is delivered to students. And I would suggest that globally that shift is towards experiential learning. So why bother? I mean, what are the benefits of looking at this? Well, in our view, it is possible to address many of those higher education challenges, the one I've mentioned, and there's some very obvious areas to focus on. I think there's elements of competitive advantage that you can achieve. You definitely can achieve more efficient processes, and you can produce a much more personalized student experience through a digital outcome. In effect, I think competitive advantage is a key one. Of course, it allows you to eliminate waste amongst other benefits too. So how do you go about doing it? What are our tips for accelerating digital? Well, first, we believe it starts with strategy, and we think there should be a digital-first strategy. Universities and higher education institutions are required to reinvent their 1980s business models, I think, and think digital first. New business models, such as experiential learning, are required in order to look for opportunities to better capture and take advantage of the unique relationship that universities have with their students or consumers. Think big data, think data as a service. Another emerging trend here is a move towards experiential learning. So there's been a significant change in student patterns, and I think it's important to have a strategy that is conscious of the shift in student patterns. The strategy needs to adapt to the students' behaviors on mobile, Students are looking for universities that can provide an enhanced student experience in real time across their life cycle, one that doesn't need them to force the students to follow traditional challenges. They expect to be able to pick and choose easily, they need to be able to modify their experience, and they need to do it across multiple digital platforms. I love this quote from Trevor Woods, who's the CIO at Monash. "I don't have a map, but I've got a compass." And I interpret this to mean that he knows where the North Star is, and that's where he wants to get to. He does that by responding to users' needs as he goes, and he directs his ship accordingly, but he will still get due north at the end. Second tip is around fostering an innovation culture. This is difficult because universities and higher ed organizations generally have to move from deeply institutionalized delivery frameworks. They need to change to a service-oriented culture with a strong consumer focus. One where universities understand that innovation means change as a constant rather than a series of discrete, lengthy projects. And one that allows for innovating and failing faster. And I think failing faster is the key. The trick is to enable innovation, not to augment. Here's another quote from Paul Shetler, who was the Chief Innovation Officer for the Australian government until recently. He suggests that you need small teams delivering in a very lean way with a clear minimum viable product. 3 weeks have delivered over 180 projects in the last 5 years. All of them have been delivered using small, and I mean pods of 3 people, run by small, lean teams using a unique 3 weeks beyond agile methodology. So in terms of tips, the last one I would suggest here is it's around pace, simplicity, and rapid iteration. Digital technologies and platforms such as Google's cloud platform, combined with the 3 weeks model, allow development and delivery to happen at pace. Big problems are broken into much smaller, atomic, and simple features. And these features are released to users frequently to get their feedback. This allows for rapid iteration. Of course, this approach needs buy-in from business stakeholders to succeed. However, in our experience, the benefits are very compelling. In terms of in the context of delivering at pace or delivering at pace, many universities have adopted traditional agile frameworks for delivery and development. From what we've seen in our experience, Agile really doesn't start to deliver value until 6 to 12 months in. And as we've said before, 2/3 of the software delivered as part of that process will actually not be used, therefore it's waste, as it's built on a set of assumptions. The Beyond Agile model that 3 weeks enforces, it needs users and enforces users from the very start. The model starts with minimal user group and minimal integration and delivered in 3 weeks. We build and validate user needs faster, then incrementally expand user groups, and we expand integration if needed. In some cases, it's never needed. In our experience, the results have seen solutions that users really want and value. And the feedback from users and students has been that their user experience has been significantly better after this approach has been adopted. From a delivery point of view, and the timelines are definitely shorter and therefore less expensive, and a lot of the risk has been eliminated. So that all adds up to a significantly less wasteful approach. Remember, if you've got questions, please send them through and we can answer them at the end. Now I think we'll have a look at a case study.
Our challenge was to build a technical solution inside a week that would solve a problem for a student at Monash. But to do this, we wanted to engage students at every step of the way, right from the very beginning to actually find out what some of their problems were, all the way through to the design, the build, the test, and the release of the product.
An app that actually has like all the rules and stuff. Is it easier to find like just to study?
It became clear when we were talking to the students that there were some really top key issues that we could solve in a hurry. So we took that on board and we started development work straight away.
Problem with probably exact solution was Moodle. If you're trying to find a computer lab to work in, you've got to click the sign on or something. Maybe more information about free songs, that's cool.
As a developer, it's critical that you get feedback. And the more feedback you get, you can feed that back into the build of the application. Without that feedback, you're sort of directionless. Everything's based on a hunch.
One of the really clear issues for us was students were saying a lot about their access to computer labs. There's high demand for that sort of facility. So we worked really hard to design a product around the customer need about how to find and how to use and how to put a computer lab here in Monash.
The pace that we work out is literally feature by feature, which is hour by hour. So, for example, a student says, listen, I can't see this icon on the map. I don't even know where it is. We take that feedback and say, okay, well, we can incorporate that into a map. You build, test, get feedback from those users.
Actually, the first trial I was enrolled.
Maybe like a kind of information is like available,
Thanks, Dawn. So good. So maybe add in something to add in.
And then build again based on the feedback that they were giving.
We spent the last week building a computer lab application which allows students to find where the nearest computer lab is. Students' involvement right from the very beginning of the process all the way through to the end means that we've got a product that they really need and want.
Okay, we've said that most of our projects don't get started until 9 months in. What we're suggesting in summary is, I think universities need to be prepared to fail a little bit more, make failure part of their strategy, which is basically the lean strategy. And the focus should be on outcomes, not on the technology solution. So just to wrap up before some questions, we've said that the challenges facing higher education cover technology, process, learning models. But the opportunity to address those can achieve competitive advantage and improve personalized student experience, and can definitely eliminate waste in processes. We've talked about some tips to accelerate digital, and the 3 weeks method is beyond agile. So the next step for universities, is it time to try something different? And, in our opinion, we think it is. Thank you for that. I can see we've had a couple of questions come through. Okay, cool. The first question that's come through, could you give an example of the FTE savings or people savings we could expect from a big-ish university? Okay, good question.
Thank you, Justin, for submitting that one.
Thanks, Justin. Sure. So by big, let's say 50,000 students. Overall, in our experience, we've seen in excess of 100 easily avoidable FTEs for organizations of this size. In one case, one university, over 200 people. So this is not across one section, it will be across multiple faculties or departments. So it could be admissions, across student administration, and various faculties. One small project we're looking at, so it doesn't have to be across all of those. If you look at one small project, we think that we'll be able to remove or repurpose 10 of the existing admin staff in admissions area alone, just by avoiding the rekey of paper forms that are on which the processes are run right now. So I hope that gives you an example, Justin. Another question that's come through. Are there any pitfalls you could talk to us about, things we should not do? Wow, okay, really good question. So that's a good question. So the biggest mistake I think we're seeing is that universities that seem to be repeating or making the same mistake that they previously made, maybe in the 80s and 90s, and that's a reliance on buying big monolithic platforms, perhaps like Salesforce or something like that. But then building on big, complicated customizations around those systems. And, you know, in our opinion, that compounds issues and the challenges that universities are facing in a number of ways, I suppose. First of all, it takes a huge amount of time and cost to build vendor-specific training and deliver it. And it, you know, generally you need to have costly specialist resources to manage and execute those systems. So secondly, the user experience of those big systems is designed as an internally facing product, so towards staff, not towards students or agents for that matter. So you end up with a system that looks something like it was built in the 80s, but geared towards internal staff, not the actual consumers. And our suggestion is that you need to be looking to the users and consumers to drive your development. And then thirdly, I suppose, if you think about the procurement and engagement with those large systems, you need to be locked into the vendor. You know, you're locking yourself into the vendor for non-vendor specific capabilities. So similar to how many universities are currently experiencing with it, you know, when they're trying to customize on top of their student admin systems from the 90s. So there are very easy ways to avoid these pitfalls, and you know, we can talk to you about how you might overcome them. So I think we've just run out of time, and thanks so much for those questions. They were fantastic, and there's more coming through that we can't answer.
Yeah, just thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you, Pete. This concludes the webinar. Oh, wait a minute. We have had one question here from Dana. Thank you, Dana. We still have time. The question is,
so how about a technology solution which provides workflow for approvals at different levels in the HR space? Yeah, look, it's a fantastic idea. Earlier on thanks, Dana. Earlier on, we talked about HR finance being one of the areas that you could definitely address a lot of these process efficiencies. Yeah, and in our experience, we've seen HR finance departments which literally have hundreds and hundreds of small processes that need, you know, manual signatures. They need 2 or 3 different approval levels, and you know, final authorization perhaps by the head of finance or senior team members. And yes, the simple answer is yes, the technology, a simple digital solution can absolutely minimize the impact of those things, and it can reduce processing time from, you know, hours and days and weeks down to minutes, literally. Not only that, a lot of the challenges around those HR and finance processes are that there's no clear visibility of what, you know, where transactions are in that process. And applying a digital or technical solution, you know, can make those things very clear and very visible to the people who need to see it. So you can start to manage workflow, you can redirect team members to look on the critical aspects and not focus on the less critical transactions. Yeah, great.
Does that answer your question, Dana? If you can please let us know on the thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that. If there aren't any more questions, we'll like to close. I think that's it. We'll close for questions then. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for joining our webinar. I hope it's been useful. And if you have any feedback for us at any later point, we would really appreciate it. Please, let me go to the last slide. Please get in touch. Here are details. You can find them on the last slide. Once again, thank you very much for joining, and have a good day.
Thank you.